Welcome to Gleaning and Gathering. I'm your host, Eric Himelick. Today, I would like to talk about the topic of mentoring. I don't know if it's just me. I don't think it is, but I have noticed, especially recently, the need for mentors. Probably partially because I have a number of young men who have reached out to me and been interested in or expressed a need for mentoring in their lives. One of the things that I've noticed is that there is an absence of male role models today, and that's a growing crisis. Many young men in the past had a father figure, some sort of positive male influence in their life, but research has shown that father absence is on the increase, and connected to that are other things like dropping out of school, incarceration, mental health struggles, other things. And mentors often can be the gap that can step in and make the difference. But I think young men particularly are struggling today and often in silence. One young man asked me recently in a very pointed way, how do you become a man? What are the steps? And I think in generations past, that pathway was clear. If you were going to become a knight, there was a period where you would become a squire, you would go through a process, and there was a rite of passage. And you knew when you became a knight, you were knighted, you were receiving this long tradition that had been passed down to you. But there aren't those exact moments today, at least for most men. And as a result, they're left with questions. Am I really a man? Do I really have what it takes to be a man? Because there's no clear lines for many of them. And men are socialized to suppress vulnerability. And that means that young men often don't ask for help, even when they desperately need it. There are questions that are on their mind. There are things that they may be struggling with. And they may feel reticent to bring those up to a teacher or to a parent, but they might share that with a trusted mentor. I think another key important point is that mentorship provides a map, not just advice. Young men don't just need information. They need to see someone who's actually navigated the path ahead. They need to see what that looks like. Where could I be in 10 years, in 20 years? And I think a mentor models how to handle conflict, how to build a career, how to maintain integrity under pressure, how to balance strength and humility, all those kinds of things that are not going to be provided in a course for you. There's no classroom for this. But being able to see someone's life and to be able to ask those questions of someone who's actually walked the road ahead of you is incredibly valuable. Studies from organizations like Mentors and Big Brothers, Big Sisters have shown that mentored young people are more likely to graduate. They're more likely to hold steady employment, avoid risky behaviors. And the thing that I want to emphasize to you is that there is a return on investment, both personally and socially, for mentoring someone, for taking time to really pour into someone's life. If you're like me, you may look at yourself and say, I don't really have anything to give. I'm not anybody. I don't have anything really. I wouldn't say that I'm particularly successful in any given area. But what I've recognized is that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have everything figured out in order to truly be a mentor. Historically, men pass down their values, their skills, their identity through guilds or through apprenticeship. There was a process and there was a structure for being able to share those kinds of truths. And many of those structures have eroded, unfortunately. And attentional mentorship is a way to help rebuild that connection. And so I want to encourage you, if you're in a place right now where you're a little further down the journey, maybe you're in your 30s or your 40s, find someone that you can pour into, someone that's in your circle of influence, and give them a sense of belonging, of accountability, of something larger than themselves. Reaching out and offering is something that makes you vulnerable. What if they don't want my input in their life? And that may be what's keeping you right now from really making that available. But I want to encourage you to just take inventory. Who is in my life right now that needs a mentor? Who is it right now that may be in my sphere of influence that's struggling, that I could come alongside and spend time with? One of the young men that was at Victory Village Shop, hung out there while we were working in Indianapolis, he kept getting kicked out of school. And so he didn't have anybody at home because his mom was working during the day. And so he would come to the shop because he didn't have anywhere to hang out. And one of the ladies who was there running the shop just was exasperated one day. He was there out of school, getting into things, creating problems. And I remember I just said, come run with me. And so we went together, drove to a little diner and asked him if he had breakfast. He hadn't. And so we just sat down at this little diner and spent time together. And I just asked him questions, talked to him, but we ate pancakes together. And I remember just the difference in his behavior right after that. Spending time together just a little bit, just a little tiny bit, was like water on a plant that was wilted. He just brightened right up and had such a different perspective. Now, it didn't solve all of his problems. There was still all kinds of challenges that he was facing. But spending a little time made a huge difference. You may look around and say, I can't do something for all those who are needing it around me. And that's true. But it reminds me of that little story of the man on the seashore with all of the starfish spread out across the seashore, and the person saying, you can't save all of these. How can you make a difference? And him picking up one, throwing it back into the ocean, said, I made a difference for that one. I think that needs to be our approach. And I want to encourage you, if you're a man that's, maybe not particularly successful, maybe don't feel like you have anything to give, but begin to take stock of where you're at and what are the lessons that God has taught you, and how can you share that with others? And begin to look at, who has God put in my life that I could make a difference for? It reminds me of 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. Paul, speaking to Timothy, says, and the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. This Christian life is not just about me and Jesus having a good thing going on, but it's about taking the truth that has been passed down to us and committing it to faithful men who will be able to pass that along to others. And so I want to encourage you to take someone with you. Don't just walk this Christian journey alone, but find someone that you can pour into, someone that you can spend time with, someone that you can pray with, encourage, strengthen. Be a mentor to someone this week. It's what's on my mind today for Gleaning and Gathering. God bless.